Hi guys, welcome to a new Patreon mixing video, and today we're taking a look at my cover of Dealer's Grotesque. I'm really happy with this one. I think this might be my best sounding cover to date, actually. If you've watched the mixing tutorial for my cover of Crooked, which is the same band, a lot of the things are similar, but there's some key differences. So stick with me even if you saw that last one, and let's get to it. So first things first, let's go to my master mix bus where the whole music goes through. This usual suspect is usually my mix bus compressor, but today he's not compressing. Then you might ask, well, João, why is it there? It's there because it has these little buttons. This one is a saturation button. It has 3 different types of saturation for your mix bus. Steel gives you a nice bump in the low end for your kick and bass. Iron gives a full low mid-range that's good for guitars, and nickel gives a nice shiny top end. These are very, very subtle changes, but I like the plugin enough to not compress with it and just have that little change here. So this little steel change, you can consider it a bump at around 50 Hertz, if anything. This no small time button just makes things sound better. I don't know what it does, but I'll turn it on and off for you to see. Something about the high end in the guitars and how wide they are. This is a really cool plugin, even if you don't compress with it. My compressor is the more usual SSL mix bus compressor. So the settings are 30 millisecond attack for a nice punch on the drums, and the automatic release, which I find is the release that makes it sound the most natural and less bumpy. If you go to the faster releases, your music starts doing this. And if you go to the slower release, your music starts doing this, and it's quieter. The auto release is where it feels natural to me. 4:1 ratio, and let's see how much compression. Not much, about a constant 2 dB. This explanation of the release with the voice change might be one of the most educational things I've ever done. Let's see if you can notice it. I'll pump it. Oh. You see how it's doing this? Now here it's gonna go quiet. And on auto, even if it's cranked, it sounds natural volume. I think I just found an amazing way to explain release on a compressor. Well, whatever. And after that, our usual limiter, Ozone. But today, Ozone is at between fast and slow, which are different characters of limiting you can get. He's at 0.2 today. What this does is that it distorts the music during the limiting instead of actually like turning it down and making it bumpy. I'm gonna put it at 10 so you can see. 10, actually, since it's slow, you'll hear the music doing this because it's gonna be released slowly. You can hear it going, dun, 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 dun. And with a fast character, it's just in your face. But this is at an expense of distortion. You can, on drums you don't care, but when it's, for example, this last long note, you can hear it distorting a bit. Take a listen. I cranked it so you could really tell the bzz. On sustained material, it's bad, but on drum material, it's just awesome. So don't be afraid to push your limiter if it has a fast character for the distortion. There's another tip. This drum sound is basically the same as the last dealer cover, but I'll explain it here for those of you that are new and haven't watched the previous one. You can watch it though. You can watch all my previous mixing tutorials if you're a new Gold Patreon. Thank you so much for subscribing. I like to think that I'm building a store, a huge amount of mixing videos for when new patrons come in, they get all this content they can watch. And I just hope it's good content. That's all. Let's go over the drums. So these drums, let me see. These drums are a mix of the Invasion kit from Get Good Drums on the kick and cymbals, Modern and Massive on the snare and toms, and that would be a Superior China, a Superior Splash, and a Superior snare blended with the Modern and Massive snare. So this is what the drums sound like unprocessed. Very cool. And let's see how they wind up processed. Let's see how we got here. Our drum bus has some EQ to brighten the top, no, not actually the top end, to give some mid-range to the entire kit. 1.5 on the drums is where your kick and snare have that lower slap, not the higher slap. That would be here at 8K, but at 1.5K you get some knock. People call it knock, I like that one. Get some knock out of the drums right here. Then some parallel compression. What you do is you get very extreme levels of compression and then you blend it with the mix knob. 15% sounds nice. Then your regular compression. What I like the regular compressor to do on the drum bus is tame the snare down so I can bring the rest of the kit up to level with the snare. You can see it reducing on the snare hits there. And this EQ is just removing anything below 30 Hz from my kick drum. Speaking of kick drum, listen to it unprocessed and then process. This transformation brought to you by compression, of course. Let's turn them one at a time individually. I wanted this compressor to bring some attack to the kick drum as well as consistency. Since I am alternating a little bit on the velocities, and not too much because the song's not too dynamic, but these 120 hits are a bit different from these 110 hits, and I can make them different but volume-wise consistent if I compress them. After that compressor, this SSL channel strip EQ is giving it that mid-range knock, that high-end slap, and we're removing some bullshit we don't like at 800 Hz and about 160 Hz. Also some saturation that makes big difference. I've shown this little saturation knob a bunch of times in these mixing tutorials, but this is one of the harder things to explain about my drum mixing. So I'll try to explain it now. I'll turn the saturation off, then all the way up, and you'll see if you can tell a difference. Listen for the lows on the kick. Not the sub lows, but like the nice 100 area. Try to see if you can listen. Oh God, the plugin was off. Embarrassing myself. Attempt number 2. I don't know what to tell you. It just sounds that that little bit more full that in the final mix ends up making a difference. Then there is some low-end harmonic generation at 55 Hz for that thump. I'll exaggerate it so you can see what it sounds like. Then some limiting for consistency again. Oops. Oh my god. Okay. Just hitting it the tiniest bit. And this EQ is getting rid of some frequencies I thought annoying on the kick. And that was, it had a little bit too much 81 Hertz. Our snare will be going from this to this. So basically, it's going to get beefier and more distorted. It begins its journey of getting beefier and more distorted in an SSL EQ strip with the saturation and some high end as well as 200 Hertz. This is the boominess of your snare. If you want a fat snare, you're going to boost 200 Hertz. I'll exaggerate it so you could tell. Oh yeah. Here, if I boost it really, you can see how the SSL channel strip really emulates a real strip because the distortion is not letting me boost that much. It just starts distorting. If I turn this off, yeah, it sounds nice and clean. But if I turn the saturation up, it distorts. This is a better explanation of how it works. Cool. Then into some compression, the same as my mix bus actually, except the release is on 300 milliseconds. That was hard. This gives it some nice attack. Then the same harmonics generator that was on the kick is on the snare, but not at 55 Hertz. Now it's at 120. 120 makes more sense for snare. 55 was way too low. This clipper is here to further add distortion. This EQ is just scooping the mid-range a little bit. I was trying to get rid of this. And this limiter is here for dynamic consistency again. Oh, it's actually not hitting it, so it can go away. Oh no, it's doing a volume change. That's all. The toms, is there a tom part in this song even? There is. Maybe more toms? That's good enough. The tom bus has three different things. So all the toms go through these three elements in this order. So this is a different type of saturation, which is this color wheel right here. It adds some nice fatness. It's not using the compressor circuit. This is compressing for the attack in the same way that the snare was. And this boy is adding our usual saturation. Individually, each tom has a similar chain. So a compressor, much in the style of the kick, just to give it a volume consistency and what was the other one? Attack. Then into the same saturation with a mid-range cut and high-end boosts. And then clipping for distortion. Very similar thing for every tom. Oh. If I turn it all off, you'll see how important these are. Big difference. So what I call brass bus is everything that's not a direct mic. So, oops, excuse me, that's not a direct mic on shells. So that would be everything that has cymbals on it. Not the best part to show it. So this is basically getting rid of the lows from the kick anything that's kicking these mics, I don't really want. And then grabbing my 4K on the cymbals and just taming it down, because it sounds like this. It sounds bad. This limiter is grabbing the peak of the snare, because the only peak I want to hear on the snare was on this track. From here, all I want to hear is ambience. If I turn it off, you'll hear the snare poking through. Very subtle, but very important. So the hi-hats basically just get rid of all the low end. Do I ever play the hi-hats? Maybe on this song I don't. The overhead mic is going through some compression and some EQ. Let's look at the compressor first. You can see it's 3 decibels of gain reduction, but which might seem light, but the mix is only at 25%, because I want the cymbals to breathe freely and not be compressed and always in your face. After that, this EQ over here is adding high end at 10K and removing some more of that 4K. The saturation here is not very big or important. As for my room mics, the room mics is what you combine with the snare to make the snare sound large, because this is pretty big, but it just sounds like a little poke. If you mix it with the rooms, now you're cooking, right? Room close is for me a very unimportant mic. I just wanted to have a realistic picture of the kit. All I did to make it sound cooler is that same saturation circuit on this SSL. The room far is where the snare is most important. So this is what's happening on the room mic, these two. Look at how hard this EQ hits the snare. If I turn this off, can you guess what happens? It sounds dumb. As soon as you get some compression on that snare, on your room mics, the snare will sound nice and big. Sometimes people want a big snare and they will mess with the direct snare track, and that's not the way to do it. Leave your direct snare track to be a nice clean hit. Clean, you know what I mean? And leave the rooms to make up for the ambience. And to make the snare extra ambient, compress it super hard on the rooms with whatever compressor you'd like, really. This EQ is just making everything brighter, excuse me. This mono mic I'm using for a cool effect. I'm sending the kick and toms to this center mic. Oh no, actually just snare and toms. And what I'm doing, as you can tell, is of course saturating the crap out of it, and a really extreme EQ with a lot of low end and a lot of high end. If I turn this off, it sounds stupid. If I turn it on, it sounds really different and unique. By blending this in, you get a nice energy. That's the drum sound. Sometimes I listen to these things in solo and I think, oh God, I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I even trying to explain this? But as soon as I play them all together, I realize why I did some of the decisions I did. Because it sounds pretty okay. I'm happy with this. The bass tone, for a nice, very in-depth explanation of the bass tone, I will send you back to the Crooked cover mix tutorial, because that's where I explain this very cool bass tone in great detail. Here, since it's behind the guitars, it's not that important. So go watch that bass tone on the video and I'll wait. Okay, nice. Now that you're back, what I did differently from that bass tone is on the bass pick attack track, I turned the volume up because I wanted it to be more heard between the guitars. This bass pick attack is what, well, gives you the pick attack. Fucking wow. Look what happens if I play the bass and the guitars at the same time and I start messing with the bass pick attack fader. You can create many different combinations of bass tones by mixing these 3 tracks together. This is a completely different bass tone from what I had on the final mix, which was this. So very cool. The rhythm guitars, basically, you'll find this funny. The tone is exactly the same as my Crooked cover, but I just have my preamp effects and then the amp. And all the EQ I had on the cover before was removed. And it sounds better. Which taught me a great lesson, which is sometimes less really is more. It might sound cliche, but it's true. So let me explain once again what the tone is. The amp, of course, is Tone Forged Jason Richardson, but these 2 elements that come behind it are most important. And this is a secret to my guitar tone that I will explain to you now. Listen to these DIs. Wait. Oh, okay, yeah, they are super loud. They're okay. If you ask me, they're a little bit woofy. And when you turn on the amp, you will hear some of that woof. Still nice. Let's explain what's on the amp real quick. A lot of treble, the stock cab, and the EQ settings are these. Taking off a lot of low end at 100 and 240 and boosting the mid-range at 1.5K and boosting the high end at 7K. You immediately get this, which is very workable. But since I thought it was a bit woofy, instead of going in the EQ and changing it in the amp, I changed it in the DI sound. I added this EQ. Watch. This has a drastic difference on the amp. I am going to play the amped sound and watch me toggle the EQ on and off before the amp. Is that crazy or what? That's actually crazy. Removing this makes the tone sound like I boosted this, but in a different way. Because if what I did was boost this, it would sound very much different than removing this. I don't know how to explain it to you, but try it. Before your amplifier, try changing your DI with an EQ, and you'll like what you hear, I bet. This clipper here is just to make the sound very loud and consistent before it hits the amp. Now it's really distorting. And if you distort before your distortion, you get more distortion. So that's the guitar tone. these effect guitars, these are cute. I'll explain them. These are the same tone, but there's a chorus after them to make the way you do the is by making the rate of chorusing very fast and play around with the depth. This is only 15%, because if it's 100, well, it's a bit too much. Let's go for 20. Very cool. The pitching effect is done with this free Reaper pitching plugin. It's automated, as you can see right here. Look at the envelope. And as the envelope changes, you'll see the shifting occurring. Super cool stuff. Your DAW, your program, probably has an effect for free that can do this. So be sure to look it up. The lo-fi guitar on the intro is the same tone, but without the pre-effects and with this lo-fi pedal engaged. It makes it super easy. After that, I added some extra filters just so that I can get rid of all the low end. That's it. Oh no, this lead part. That's just the Mercurial SS11X pedal into a chorus and reverb pedal emulation. And into an EQ that gets rid of all the bad frequencies. You see this filter? You want to hear what it does? When you hear someone say, oh, digital amp sims have that stupid digital high-end, blah, blah, blah. This is what they're talking about. It's this area. Look at this filter. It's a world of difference. You think sometimes you want more high-end on your guitars, but you'd be amazed how much like shit you can filter out of the super high-end. So try that. And that's basically it. These explosions are mostly unaffected. Since they have a lot of glass in them, there's an EQ taking off the excess glass. Because this is very pokey. And this is nicer. There, I've been experimenting with saturation on the explosions too, because your boy loves saturation. I don't know if it's doing anything really, so I'm not even gonna mention it. And sometimes there's the explosion reversed. So that's it, guys. That's my mix of Grotesque. Very nice. I hope you liked it. I hope you're liking these. If you're new, welcome to the Patreon page. Be sure to message me if you need anything and to comment down below. Oh God. And to comment down below if you have any questions about this mix tutorial. So yeah, thank you guys. I will see you in the next one.